Oh, hello. You find me in an elevator, whizzing up to the top of the Space Needle to look at the view of a museum with some smashed up guitars. We're in Seattle, right? So that must mean that we're talking about grunge in our latest episode today. It's going to be another two-parter because we have a very insightful special guest, Ryan Schaff from the Broken Record Player podcast. And we talked for so long in depth about two different bands that we decided to split it into two and extend the fun. So for this part of the podcast, we will be talking about Pearl Jam and whether they are overrated. Ryan doesn't think they're overrated, but Fran and I do. So you'll have to find out if he manages to convince us otherwise. There's some popping on Ryan's microphone in some bits that we've tried our best to kind of minimize. We didn't really know what was going on, but it should be a smooth audio experience for me, just as smooth as this elevator ride. Off we go. Let's discuss some grungy guitar rock.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over-underrated?
Over-underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over-underrated.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Over Underrated with Fran and Babs. How are we doing on this fine sunny day? Fran, have you been, for example, up until since 4:30 in the morning?
I love podcasting so much. I woke up at 4:30 to do as much research as possible to get as much grunge inside my body so I can discuss it today, guys. So, hope you've done the same, yeah?
It sounds like he's joking, but he did tell me how many documentaries he watched to prepare for this podcast. So everyone prepare yourselves for the facts that are going to come your way, but also potentially the vitriol that's going to come your way today from Fran. We are not alone today. We have a grunge aficionado with us, and I will hand over to him now to introduce himself. Ryan, how are you?
Wow, grunge aficionado. I have never been called that before.
Ah, there we go.
I am now, though. I'm going to put that on my title under
on your name badge, right?
Yeah.
Next time you go to a conference. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, I'm doing great, and thank you for having me. It's really awesome to be here with both of you. And you said it was a nice sunny day where you're at. It is nothing like that out here in San Francisco. It is cloudy and foggy.
Perfect for grunge.
Perfect for grunge.
He's in California. 80% of the chances are that it is. So yeah, I'm so sorry to hear.
Well, if I was in Southern California, you would be right. And if I was on the other side of the San Francisco Peninsula, you would be correct. But the side I'm on I shouldn't say never, rarely gets sunlight. It's usually foggy, which I don't mind. But yeah, it's perfect. Like Fran said, it's perfect for grunge. So.
And Ryan has a music podcast, which I guested on. Do you want to tell us a bit about that, Ryan, and what you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we did a great episode on PJ Harvey and her album Dry, and it was great having you on. The podcast is called the Broken Record Player Podcast, and what I do on there is I bring people on and we talk about albums that we both love, and we do deep dives on those albums, and it's like we got into it with PJ Harvey.
And there are some themes that are going to come up again today. I did say to, I can't remember who now, but I was like, I feel like podcasting at the moment is talking about feminism with men, which is great. I'm up for that if you guys are, because there are some themes in Pearl Jam as well. Even if you don't listen to podcasts at all, which why are you listening here? You should follow the Broken Record Player podcast's Instagram, because Ryan has some amazing vinyl and you always set it up very nicely. And it looks good. And you're doing some giveaways as well, right? From what I saw.
I am. Yes. I did. My first giveaway was Facelift by Alice in Chains. So the grunge record right there. Good. But right now we're doing Ace of Spades by Motorhead. So that one is up for somebody to win. And all you have to do is go onto my Instagram and like the post, follow the page, and tag a friend, and you can be entered to win. And I'm going to announce the winner at the end of the month. So right after I do a new episode.
So no pressure. We need to get this episode out in May.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was going to say, there might be other competitions on by the time it comes out, so, but follow anyway to keep an eye.
Yes, I will be doing more record giveaways. So,
excellent.
But those are the ones that I've done so far. Yeah.
So yeah, I had such a great time on Ryan's podcast that I really wanted him to come on today, and we were discussing different themes, and we settled on grunge. And the band that Ryan has picked as overrated today, he doesn't think is overrated, as far as I'm aware, but Fran and I do. So he's going to be trying to convince us of their merits. And then he's picked another underrated band, which I like, but I don't think Fran does. So prepare yourselves for an interesting discussion today.
Poor Fran. Fran, you must feel like you got the short end of the stick on this episode, huh?
Yeah, a lot of these ones with guests, I seem to get the short straw, I've noticed. So I will be inviting someone I know and forcing Babs to listen to some really...
Can I say, Bon Jovi was someone you knew, okay? But I did not know him.
Isn't it?
Okay, right. So let's get into it. Ryan, who have you picked as the overrated band today?
Well, I picked Pearl Jam, but I don't think that they are overrated, like you said. So I'll be trying to kind of argue against them being overrated. But yeah, I picked Pearl Jam. And I have been a fan of Pearl Jam for a long time, since high school. When I first heard the song Jeremy, I just really got into that, and it was such a unique sounding song, and I just really, I don't know, there was something beautiful but also deeply disturbing about what was going on there, and I knew it was a serious topic, and it sure was. Like, the song was really a serious song, and after that I was just into Pearl Jam, and that album 10 especially really got into that album. And I think what really made Pearl Jam even more of a favorite of mine is after going to Seattle and driving around Seattle with Pearl Jam playing, it just kind of brought it all together. And I went to the Mopop Museum and saw a Pearl Jam exhibit there, and everything just kind of fit, and Pearl Jam just really, I started to appreciate them even more after that trip I took up to Seattle. So, but yeah, I've been a fan of theirs for quite a while. I do have to admit 10 is the album I most often go back to listening to, and I really find that album to be their best, but I've appreciated a lot of different songs that they've done over their career, and they've had a long career, which you can't really say that about a lot of those grunge bands. They kind of all fizzled out, or members died and there was really no way to carry on. Or like a band like Alice in Chains, they continued, but I do like their new material, but there is definitely something missing without Lane Staley being the frontman of that band. So Pearl Jam is like one of those few grunge bands that has existed in its original format since they began. So I don't know, there's something about that also makes me feel like if I go to see them, or if I pick up their latest record, it's still them. There's nothing that's really changed too much. And I really appreciate that. It's hard to do that when you're coming out of that scene, especially. It just seemed like addictions and drugs took their toll on so many people from that music scene.
Would you say they're your favorite grunge band?
No. In fact, if I were to, there's the big four, right? There's Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam. They're probably number 4 for me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But
it's such an impassioned opening argument. I was convinced that, yeah.
I love all 4 of those bands. So, but if I were to rank them, they would be my number 4.
Would you really describe Pearl Jam as being a grunge band, or were they a rock band who came out of that scene? Because if you listen to them as a whole, they sound the least grungy. Apart from Eddie's voice, they are basically just a hard rock band, aren't they? I think, compared to many of the other contemporaries, I kind of always thought like they were kind of put in that scene because they came from Seattle rather than the sound. I wouldn't really say they are as grungy as Soundgarden or Alice in Chains or Nirvana.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would sort of agree with that. I think that when I did the Alice in Chains Dirt episode on my podcast, I had a friend who was from Seattle. He was born and raised there. He doesn't even like the term grunge. He thinks that grunge shouldn't even be a genre because it's hard to really describe what is grunge. What does grunge sound like? And so I do agree that a lot of those bands were just, at that time, they existed in Seattle like the Melvins, for example, they're not really grunge to me, but they kind of got lumped in because they're from the Seattle area. And I mean, even another band we're going to talk about, L7, sometimes they don't really sound grunge because they're a lot more punky, a lot more punk inspired, but they existed at that moment in the early 90s when all these alternative rock bands were blowing up. And I don't think the music world knew how to categorize them. And they just kind of all threw them in with grunge. I do think Pearl Jam sounds the least grunge, though. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the most grunge is probably Alice in Chains or Soundgarden. But I agree that Pearl Jam definitely has more of that hard arena rock sound than the other bands did. But because they're coming out at the same time, and like you said, Eddie's voice, and there are moments, especially on 10, where there's a grittiness that you can associate with grunge. I think that they got kind of lumped in with that, but I wouldn't necessarily separate them from grunge just because their roots are there, and a lot of the members of the band were in other grunge bands before, like Temple of the Dog and Mother Love Bone. So I think their roots are definitely in the grunge scene.
When reflecting on grunge for this episode, I think if you'd asked me before, I'd be like, oh yeah, I love grunge. But actually thinking about it, I do like grunge, but it's not a genre that I'm very musically nerdy about. I would say that of bands categorized as grunge, the only ones that I've kind of explored, gone off and listened to albums, it's Nirvana, Alice in Chains, 7 Year Bitch, Melvins, and L7. That's it. And even for those, like, I haven't that much sat down and listened to albums and no album tracks, maybe apart from Nirvana and Alice in Chains. It's like, oh, I listened to it, I like it, but that's it. And I mean, I've gotten into a few more grunge bands recently. Like I saw Mudhoney live at a festival in 2015, and I was like, oh, okay, these guys are good. I'll check them out. And Husker Du as well, who are, I would argue, in that scene. But it's definitely a genre that I have to be in the mood for. And reflecting on it, I was like, actually, I think when I say I like grunge, I like Nirvana because that's the band I know and like the best. And yeah, Pearl Jam, they passed me by. Like they were one of those bands. I never really heard a song of theirs that I liked before this playlist. Let's see how I feel at the end. And Ryan, you'll be, I'm sure, devastated to hear that I did see them live in 2006 at the Reading Festival, and I was nonplussed.
Wow.
Yeah, it just, at that point, again, I didn't really have an opinion on them. I hadn't knowingly heard a song. And Fran and I were talking just before the recording about how in the UK, it's not really a band that you listen to on the radio, right? Like it's like you have to know and go and listen to. All I remember is Eddie Vedder had a tambourine, and I was not happy about it. And I went to look at the set list, and there are a few songs from your playlist. But yeah, they are a huge band. I've got some kind of sales stats of like they've sold 85 million albums worldwide, but 32 million of them are in the US. I had no idea that they were still releasing albums, including last year. I really like their politics. Eddie Vedder's an attractive man. A lot of people like his voice, but I have to say I find it quite grating. I was trying to find like a word. I was like, it's not whiny, but it's great. It's a bit much sometimes, but I personally wanted to come into this playlist cold. I thought I probably don't know any of the songs. I think I listened to Jeremy before, and that was it. So yeah, that's my relationship to grunge and Pearl Jam. How about you, Fran?
So yeah, I'm an old man. So I was around in the early 90s. I do remember this scene, although I was 10 or 11, but obviously MTV was a thing. And especially with Pearl Jam, Jeremy, for example, was all the time on MTV back in the day. So I knew Alive and Jeremy a lot from Pearl Jam. I knew Nirvana. Yeah, I was not on board, unfortunately, with the scene because the sixth formers in my school would wear the flannel shirts and have the greasy hair and be moody. And I wanted to listen to 90s pop and dance to early Prodigy. So, and
there's
isn't Prodigy. And and as I said to Babs earlier, like Pearl Jam in the UK were a band when 10 you'd hear on MTV. Then after 10, nothing. And like until I lived in Seattle, I heard other Pearl Jam songs, and like I would always hear the song "Last Kiss," the cover. Yeah, that was on radio literally every day in Seattle, and I was like, I've never heard a song in my entire life. Why is it so big? And it's strange, and like, but I know Pearl Jam fans, and they would be like insanely into Pearl Jam, and they would follow them everywhere. And I think in the 90s, people into Pearl Jam were also into Jeff Buckley, quite earnest singer-songwriter fans, into Neil Young. And I have been in the same field as Pearl Jam in Isle of Wight Festival 2015, but I chose to go in the other direction to see the Charlatans do the 20th anniversary of their best album with about 50 people. So and at the end, I did see Pearl Jam in the distance. So I can say I've seen Pearl Jam. I don't know what song it was, but I apologize that we have both seen Pearl Jam.
Yes. Sorry.
How is it that you have both seen Pearl Jam? You don't like Pearl Jam, and I have never seen them. That's just
in
how
England,
it works.
We call it Sod's
sometimes.
Law. I think you say Murphy's Law. One of those things.
The playlist that you put together, Ryan, did surprise me, and I've come out of it, with some different opinions. So yeah,
great.
Let's get into it.
Overrated.
The first song, and by the way, just to set up the playlist a little bit, I wanted to make it sort of seem like you were at a show. Lovely. Because I wanted to, I like to make playlists where I sort of envision the set list, like what songs would I want to hear if I went to see Pearl Jam or whatever live. And so I set it up that way. So I started off with Even Flow, which I think is a great opener. It gets you kind of pumped up right away. And it was one of the songs from 10 that really stood out to me from the beginning, because I found like it just kind of, even though Once is the first track on the album, that song kind of starts off a little slow. Even Flow just really, I think, introduces you to the Eddie Vedder voice. Mm-hmm. The way he has, I'm not going to sing, don't worry, but he has this.
You're welcome to if you want to.
No. But he has this way. He has this way where he just kind of, he starts off slow and then he goes into this like weird sort of like fast paced rap, almost like where it's like rapid fire lyrics he's just spitting out there. And this song really introduces you to that style and that way that he goes about it. I just think it's a great opening track to get you kind of pumped up. And I like what it's about because it's about a homeless person. That's what it's about, actually. So this is the thing. Pearl Jam's good at telling stories and highlighting real people. And I just find that also makes the song that much better when you find out, hey, this is what it's about. It's about a real homeless person that they knew.
Oh, okay. A real homeless person that I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think this song was a good way to set the tone for Pearl Jam, because what I didn't realize about Pearl Jam really was riffs. I think what Fran was saying about maybe categorizing them as grunge is a bit reductive is correct, because for me, when this started, it reminded me of the songs that I played on Guitar Hero that we discussed in depth on the Skid Row Bon Jovi episode. It's quite country-esque and I wasn't expecting it. What I also wasn't expecting was the chorus when it came in. I enjoyed it. And it took me a few listens to decide whether I liked the song. But in the end, I decided, yeah, I do like this. And it reminded me, maybe because of the Guitar Hero Association, it reminded me quite a bit of Tripping on a Hole in a Paper Heart by Stone Temple Pilots. But this came out 5 years before, so definitely an influence on that.
So, yeah, I mean, it's one of the most memorable riffs, I think, the down, 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 and it's got a decent chorus. It's like, I'm going to put my cards on the table and say, this is not my genre, guys, but, I have an open mind. And, yeah, I think this would now be classed as, they'd be offended, dad rock.
I think you might have offended Ryan there as well.
Cool dad rock.
I don't know if I should be offended, because I'm kind of like, when I'm thinking of Pearl Jam in this song, it does have a 70s influence. You can hear it.
Yeah.
And the riffs are very Led Zeppelin 70s.
Bluesy.
Yeah.
It's not, like I said before, I think, some of the contemporaries were influenced by punk and metal. This is not that. This is the traditional, decent riff, decent guitars, a strong chorus. You can see why it is a radio hit. Yeah, so it's one of my favorite Pearl Jam songs, which is something. I hope I haven't hurt anyone's feelings, guys.
Song one. We're already with the caveats. This is great.
When I think of dad rock, I think of Tom Petty or Bruce Springsteen or something like that. Like that's dad rock to me. But Pearl Jam, I mean, people my age are dads now. So hey, Pearl Jam can be dad rock. I'm sure young people think Pearl Jam's dad rock.
Interesting.
For sure, so
the festival I saw, I say saw. The first night was Tom Petty. The second night was Bruce Springsteen, and the third night was Pearl Jam. So I'm just saying, there's a link.
Oh, there is, no doubt. Well, my second pick is continuing with that energetic theme, which is Animal. And Animal just has this energy to it that I think even surpasses Even Flow in a way. And I wanted that flow to continue. And I just think Eddie's screams on this song are really awesome with the guitar riffing along with it. And I think it's just a powerful song. It kind of stirs me. It gets me moving. It's a song I would want to hear live. And I could see myself really getting into it live. And I don't know, it's one of their heavier songs, one of their shorter songs, and it just really never lets up. There's no real slow part to it. It just is pretty consistent throughout. And I don't know, the song title is Animal, and there's something animalistic about it for Pearl Jam. Not, Pearl Jam, I'm not going to go out and say they're a risky band or like a chaotic band, but for Pearl Jam, this is pretty heavy for them.
But it's interesting what you say about chaotic, because I've made a note on a song later that I like it when they're messy. I think sometimes it's a bit too controlled, and I don't like that. This is definitely rockier and messier, and I like it. I have absolutely no idea what he's saying at the beginning. He's really mumbling. I had to go and look it up, and I was like, all right, Eddie. Like, usually I can hear what you're saying. Yeah, the riff surprised me at the beginning. It surprised me that, given how rocky and energetic it is, it felt like it had pop sensibilities. Again, that's not something that I would associate with Pearl Jam, because every time before that I've listened to them, it just doesn't click. And as someone who is into pop, if there is a bit of that, normally I liked it. And once again, I needed several listens to get into it and decide whether I like it. And I did. Yeah. And, it's 2 minutes 47. It ends quite abruptly. Like you say, it doesn't let up. It's like perfectly, contained.
I read a bit about the vocals for this, and the studio asked him to turn up the vocals, and then he explained what the song was about, and said, okay, let's bury the vocals. Apparently it's that dark. They said, it's probably best people don't know what we're saying.
Oh, really? So I just thought it was about people are shit and I'd rather be with an animal.
Well, it mentions on the internet that it could be about gang rape.
Right.
So
okay.
But he's never confirmed. He's never confirmed what it's about, as Eddie doesn't. But apparently it's quite dark. And I guess this was the album after the Behemoth 10, where they basically refused to make music videos anymore, refused to do interviews. They wanted to shy away from the exposure. So I guess he wanted to be a bit more. He could be as dark as he wanted, because he wasn't thinking about, is this going to hit primetime radio? And it probably freed him lyrically a bit more. Again, you guys are going to hate my guts. I can hear Aerosmith.
Yeah.
With the guitars and everything, it sounds like it could be an Aerosmith. And obviously, the vocal line, obviously, if you replace Eddie's with Steven Tyler, I think it could be an Aerosmith song. This isn't a bad thing. And I had never heard this before, and I quite liked it. Is this played ever on the radio, Ryan, this song? Is this known?
It's known, but it comes out on Versus, and Versus was better known, I think, for songs like Daughter and Rear View Mirror and Elderly Woman Behind a Small... God, I always get the order mixed up. Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town. There we go.
Catchy, yeah.
I think, those are the ones I think that got more attention than Animal and received more radio play, because I don't recall hearing it too much on the radio. but yeah, it's I can hear the Aerosmith. I do think, like, going back to what you said about it being darker, I think that's what, I mean, Aerosmith, I'm sure, had some dark subject matter in their songs, but this is, yeah, like Pearl Jam, this is also part of the grunge thing, is the darkness of the lyrics, I think, and what Eddie's saying. Like, it's definitely more of the grungy side than the poppy side. So yeah, but I didn't know it was about gang rape.
Well,
Rape,
not,
maybe
guys, not confirmed.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Maybe about that.
Allegedly. Yeah, I mean, I made sure with both Pearl Jam and L7 to go and look up the lyrics for everyone, because, I mean, L7 I did know before. So I was like, yeah, there's going to be some feminist themes there. And kind of all I knew about Pearl Jam was, yeah, they're very political and very right on. So I was like, well, that's probably going to come across in the lyrics. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and also I think just talking about how Eddie didn't want that publicity and everything, it just kind of shows you Pearl Jam kind of marched to the beat of their own drum. They really didn't do what people wanted them to do or expected them to do. And that's another thing I've really appreciated about them, is Eddie really just does whatever he wants. The band just does whatever they want, but yet they still remain successful, massive. They don't ever seem to like fall off the edge or anything. People still want to hear their music. So that, I think, is pretty cool in and of itself. But
Underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Underskattad. Underrated.
Garden is a song that's more of a deep cut that I never heard on the radio before. It's one of the songs from 10 that just didn't really get a lot of attention, and 10 is jam-packed full of songs that received attention. But I was listening to this song when driving around Seattle, and it really just clicked. It was like, whoa, like this, like I had never really appreciated this song before, and then it became one of my favorites. And it's really melodic, and there's an eeriness to it as well. I don't know, like I don't know what it's about, but I just love how it builds, and like it kind of goes up, then goes back down, then goes back up, and it's even more epic, and Eddie's going crazy, and then it comes back down. I just really like how it's sort of a coaster of a song. And from what I gathered, like, I'm not sure that this is what it's about, but it seemed like it could have been about somebody on their way to the execution chair or whatever. Like, it seemed like someone was going through something that was unpleasant, like they were being taken somewhere, and those were some of the opinions I read online, and it kind of made sense.
I also read some opinions online, and on Song Meanings I got, this song is about facing death without buying into the consolation provided by a faith in a religion that promises an afterlife. Garden of Stone is a cemetery, which I thought, that makes sense. Yeah, I think, Fran, you might be shocked to hear that this is one of my favorites, despite it being, as Ryan says, quite melodic. I think the complex riff and interplay between the guitars at the beginning really intrigued me. I was like, ooh, where is this going? Then the bass comes in, and I thought that was good as well. I was really enjoying it until the chorus. I don't like the chorus. I have to say it's quite bombastic, and again, this is so different to almost every other band, apart from maybe the Vines, actually. I much prefer, from this playlist, Pearl Jam generally when they're being quieter rather than when they're being louder. There's another song that we're going to talk about that, again, normally I wouldn't like a quieter, more epic song. But yeah, I think apart from the chorus and the ending, which is, riffy, I think this was my favorite song.
I think we've all read different things about the song. I've read the songs about the Gulf War, because it's 1991.
Yeah.
And about a soldier being forced to fight.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I have 3 different opinions on one song.
Should we call Eddie up and ask him? Like, maybe he'll...
Hello.
He doesn't do interviews.
Yeah.
For some reason, in a film, when they all get like high, I can imagine that soundtrack in that scene when they're all getting like, all like mellow. That's bizarrely what I saw in my head. I have no idea why.
That makes sense.
It wasn't my favourite, and I think I prefer the faster Pearl Jam songs. But
what is going on, Fran?
But-
like, role reversal here.
I prefer Eddie's voice when he's more hushed. It doesn't sound like he's eating kiwi fruit with the skin on. It's, so I prefer his vocal when it's slowed down. And I like his soundtrack to Into the Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I prefer that Eddie rather than the angry grunge, the grunge Eddie. So I prefer his vocals here, and later on, I think it's elderly woman. His vocal there, I prefer than his, his raspy, cliche Eddie vocal.
Yeah, Eddie's voice is a weird one because I normally quite like vocalists where you can feel the passion, and he is singing very often like he's on the edge of death or something, like he has to get the emotion out. But there's something, like I said, grating, and I think because in so many songs he's all over the place. Like he'll go from hush to like, and you're just like, oh, like calm down, Eddie. It's really strange. But yeah, I did like his vocal here.
But I wonder if I'm anti his vocal because of the copycats. Because so many bands came out, like Creed, etc., all having that vocal, I just thought, why is everyone singing like this? And I kind of blamed him. But obviously, it's not his fault that everyone copied that style of singing. So maybe that's why.
That is a great point. And I was going to bring that up too. Like, I think so many copycats tried to be like him and they failed, I think. And they failed in a really corny, just campy way. Just like really, I don't know, like Creed to me is the ultimate, like, I'm trying to be Eddie Vedder. Scott Stapp is trying to be Eddie Vedder, and he's just not doing it justice at all. And like, I think a better version of Eddie Vedder is Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots, although I would argue he's different. I mean, he's kind of got his own thing going. But yeah, I think the vocals that came after in that post-grunge movement really did disservice to people looking at Pearl Jam and
That's so interesting because I have to say Stain and Creed, they completely passed me by. I think because what was that? Was that early 2000s?
Late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, I think I was just deep into pop. I was not paying attention to rock. I think it was more, when new metal came about in 2001 that I would maybe start paying more attention. So I don't feel insulted, but I feel quite neutral about Stained and Creed. But I know that there are a lot of people's least favorite bands.
The next one I picked was Dissident, which is, it's not Dissident. It's Given to Fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the next one I picked. This one was a pretty big hit. And I like this because it's got more of like a positive vibe going here. It's not so like the other songs I think were a lot darker. This one is much more like uplifting when I listen to it. I find myself really liking this when I'm on a road trip or when I'm in the car. It just kind of has like a feeling like you're going somewhere. And, I guess it was inspired by Led Zeppelin and their song Going to California. And I could totally see that because it feels like you are moving, you are going somewhere. I don't know that I necessarily hear it completely, but I get the idea of the same kind of theme going with like, what is this song about? And it seemed to me like it was about moving and going places. And it's just a beautiful song that it's perfect for when you're traveling or going somewhere. There's a beautiful blue sky out there. It's one of the positive Pearl Jam songs that I like. So.
Yeah, you've mentioned driving quite a bit, and I do not have a car. I can drive, but I do not have a car. And I'm thinking, how much your opinion is on music is based on how you listen to it. Fran and I have discussed that when we prepare for this podcast, normally Fran takes the playlists for a walk, whereas I sit in front of a computer and kind of type out notes as I go. And I wonder if that makes a difference because, this was not one of my more favorite ones, but your argument on driving, I'm convinced that, windows down, blue sky, it might well be a good one. Although, despite it being one of my less favorites, I didn't dislike it. It was another one where I needed several listens, but this time I decided I didn't like it compared to the other ones. The beginning was intriguing, and I would pass on this one. But the lyrics, I went to to take a look, and yeah, I mean, they're fucking depressing.
Which it doesn't sound depressing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a bit like I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston. Like, if you look at the lyrics, Jesus Christ, yeah, she's not having a great one. But yeah, I did enjoy trying to figure out what it was, because the way I interpreted it, it was like someone who's trying to escape a terrible existence, or someone who's trying to escape the system, or, you know, going down a difficult path, and despite the obstacles in their way, like, you know, it ends with, I think, a human being that was given to flight. It's like there's some hope there. But yeah, definitely way more depressing than you imagine given the melody.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that I like his more hushed vocals, and this has those. I think it would be better if it's more acoustic, this track. It gets a bit too bombastic for me at times. I think if they stripped that more, I might prefer it. And they did a lot of like acoustic shows, I guess MTV Unplugged. Did they do this track on there, do you know? Or
I don't know, honestly. I don't remember when they did it. Do you remember what year they did that? Because this came out in 98, I think.
Maybe it's just after. I think MTV Unplugged was saying that's the mid-90s, wasn't it? From like Nirvana onwards, so maybe it's after the fact.
I picked Dissident next. That's the next one. And I just love the guitar riff on Dissident. And I love how it kind of has a bluesy sound to it. And I don't know if it's Stone or Mike McCready who's bending the strings, but it just has a really just Southern vibe to it. And it's not one that I heard a lot on the radio, but it was one from Versus that I really enjoyed, because it just had a slower kind of, almost going back to that dad rock thing that you were talking about earlier, Fran. It had a almost like a Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen country rock vibe to it. So I don't know. It's just, I wanted to slow it down a bit in the middle with this set list or this playlist to kind of start it off energetic and then go a little bit slower, more melodic. And so this is why I put this here. But what do you guys think of it?
So unfortunately, Ryan, I thought it sounded like Bon Jovi at the beginning, which
don't say that.
Yeah, no, but it did. Like, that was immediately, that was a feeling that was immediate. I mean, you can substitute it for Bruce Springsteen or someone else if you prefer, but I unfortunately got Bon Jovi, so I was like, oh god. Yes, this was my joint least favorite song, with another one that's coming up later. Towards the end, the guitars change and it becomes a bit psychedelic. That I really enjoyed. And with this song and the next one, actually, I felt very similar to Crowded House, where I'm like, these songs have all these different parts and they're coming together wrong. There are bits that I like, but the way that they've put them together, I'm not getting a picture, you know, and sometimes it works. Like I said, with Even Flow and with Animal, I was like, I felt like that, but on repeated listens, I was like, no, okay, for this one, it works. For this one, it didn't for me personally, I'm afraid. But once again, enjoyed looking at the lyrics, because obviously when you see dissident, you think political dissident, and maybe someone has betrayed him, because, you know, it's talking about she sold him to the state, she had to turn around. But actually, a lot of people were saying that it might be about a woman giving up a child for adoption or abortion, which I was like, oh, okay, yes, could be. And if it is, that's pretty smart.
I read that it's about a lady who helps a refugee, and then in the end she has to give him up to the government, and then feels depressed and sad.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I read as well. Yeah.
I gave us a term, library rock, because library rock, because it's hushed and, you know, polite, but has a bit of edge to it. Does that make sense?
Yes,
I could be desperately trying to search for new terms, and that popped into my head.
I want there to be library rock now.
Library
I really
rock.
want that to be a genre.
I've noticed on podcasts, for some reason, I cannot say my R's at certain words, especially I cannot say riff. And during the Queen of the Stone Age, I say whiff many times, and I hate myself.
Well, as you say on the episode that I listened to this morning, you have a disabled mouth.
I usually I can say the R's. Like, why can I not say a riff? It pissed me off. Anyway, I can't do anything about that, guys. This has riffs. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a very standard Pearl Jam song. If I, in my mind, created a Pearl Jam song, this would come out. It's very much all of the hallmarks you can imagine. So yeah, it's fine. I wouldn't search out for it again.
All right. And well, and going on that note, we're off to Corduroy, which is kind of another standard Pearl Jam sounding song, I think. Like, to me, this is when I think of Pearl Jam, just kind of slowing it down, Corduroy comes to mind. And I didn't give this song much love originally. It kind of grew on me over time. But I love what the backstory is for this song, where Eddie is, he saw a corduroy vest or some sort of jacket or something in a store, and it looked like the one that he used to wear, because he used to wear the corduroy jacket, and you can see it in the Jeremy music video. And the store labeled it as Eddie Vedder Pearl Jam vest, and it was selling for like $500 or something, some ridiculous amount. And he was so mad about that, and he was just upset that he was being I think marketed that way, and that he just realized he had achieved that level of fame where just the jacket that he may have worn is going for hundreds of dollars in a store. So he wrote about it, and I thought that was really cool. That was so Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really intrigued by the title. I was like, cool, because I hadn't seen the video, I didn't know that, so I was like, this is the fashion song, what's going on? And when again I went to look at the lyrics, actually, because I didn't know that story, my initial feeling, and some people feel this as well, it's a love song, actually, because he says the waiting drove me mad, you'll find me here and I'm a mess, but I don't want to take what you can give, I would rather starve than eat your bread. So once again, I think that is the great thing about Pearl Jam, that even when they're calling it corduroy, he's told that story, and that's there, you can still read other stuff into it. And even with Jeremy, as we'll come to later, even he's told a different story to the one that he said before. Like with Dissident, I liked bits of it. I really loved the beginning, and then when the vocals started, I thought, okay, this isn't really going where I want to. And then by the end I was like, no, I think I do unfortunately only like the beginning. But again, the beginning, and I wrote as well that there's an instrumental bit in it that I like, and actually with Pearl Jam very often that is where it is interesting. And I don't know if that's because you can hear the interplay between all the instruments, and I've got to shout out, they're all excellent musicians. The bass, the drums, the guitars, they are all good. But maybe it's also because Eddie isn't there. I don't know.
I mean, I read this on the internet, so who knows if it's bullshit. But to follow on with Ryan's story about the jacket, it says that the person who bought it was Ricky Martin.
What?
And he wore it when he was working on a soap opera, General Hospital.
What?
So that could be absolute bullcrap. But if it's true, I'm
Googling Ricky Martin corduroy when we get off this call.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to look that up. Wow.
Similar to Babs regarding the song, I like the elements. I like the guitars in this, and I have no idea which guitar player does what on each song. Do you know, Ryan? Is it one of those things when they change?
I don't know. I just know the guitar players are Stone Gossard and Mike McCready. I don't know who's doing what.
Much same with Babs. There's elements I like as a whole, not really my cup of tea, as I say.
Well, and then Why Go was the next one I picked, because Why Go kind of brings the energy back a bit, and I wanted to wake everybody up because I didn't know if you guys were falling asleep or what. And so Why Go kind of gets back to the earlier stuff, and I think it's no secret that 10 has the heavier songs on the list for the most part. Versus has a couple, but Pearl Jam, I think as they got more and more popular, they started to kind of fade away from the heavier stuff a bit more. They started to really get more into the, I guess as Fran calls it, more of the dad rock sound for sure.
We're saying library rock now, well, aren't we now?
Yeah, library rock. Yeah, let's go with that. But I again, I like, it's a dark song, and I like what it's about a girl that's put into a mental hospital against her wishes. And the line that really stands out to me is, she's been diagnosed by some stupid fuck.
Yeah, same.
Love that part. And I love the guitar. The guitar is kind of, there's shredding parts here. So there's going back to that hard rock shred that you would hear in the 70s or even into the 80s. I really love that.
Yes, I did like this one. They've got screechy surf guitars. Don't really know what I was trying to say there, but it's got some weird time signatures going on. It's heavier, which I really like. His voice is a little grating at the beginning, but it didn't put me off here, and I really believe in what he's saying. You know, I wrote down exactly the same thing. She's been diagnosed by some stupid fuck. It really stands out more than anything else lyrically that I heard from Pearl Jam. I think there's a bit too hyper, again with the unexpected cock rock riffs, right? Because there's a lot in the song, and I think I would have liked it more if they focused on the great bass line that's thrumming through. Like the Pearl Jam's bass lines, and often drums are really good, but it's drowned out by too many riffs sometimes, and I think that's the case here. Despite liking this song, it wasn't one of my favorites because of too many riffs. Yeah,
there's a bit too wanky on the guitar for me. It's a bit maybe a phrase you don't hear much in America. So yeah, it put me off. And the drum, it's too much, massive drum overload as well. And it's interesting because don't Pearl Jam have a cliche of changing the drummers quite a lot in the 90s? Because I think this is where they allowed their drummer off his album to shine a little bit more. But not my favourite, unfortunately. And then it moves on to Oceans, is it?
Yes. Yeah, Oceans is the next one. And Oceans is a very different song from the rest of them. It's shorter. It's definitely I think it's pretty much all acoustic if I remember correctly. And I think it's a beautiful song. I live by the ocean. When I go on walks, if this song comes on the list, which it did, I did it on purpose before recording this. I'm like, I'm gonna go for a walk, listen to the Pearl Jam playlist I made. This song came on as I was walking by the beach, and it was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, this is just, come on. Like, Eddie's voice, I really like it here. He's pretty quiet on this one. So I'm assuming that's good, right? Babs, right? That he's quiet here.
Yeah, this is, I really enjoyed this one.
Kind of has a magical sound to it. It's, and it's definitely about surf. Well, it's sort of about surfing. That's what I got from it, but yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea Eddie Vedder was a surfer before doing this, and I'm like, makes sense actually. Like, yeah, the long hair and all that, and let's be honest, the tight bod. Anyway, this is a totally different direction from a lot of the playlist. I loved it. I really didn't think I would. On second listen, it wasn't immediate. Again, it was on a second listen, but it's just such an intriguing guitar, and the bass opening, and he sounds quite vulnerable here, and I like it when he sounds vulnerable and when he goes high. I was trying to figure out what percussion was being used, because I was like, it sounds almost classical. Yeah, I think I know what you're going to say, Fran. So I was there like, is this timpani? Is this a glockenspiel? And then you go on Wikipedia and it says that Tim Palmer is on the fire extinguisher and pepper shaker. And I was like, oh, okay. Right. They did their own thing there. The lyrics are beautiful. And yeah, it sounds absolutely like water. You know, actually, Ryan, it reminded me a little bit of how Victory by PJ Harvey, which is about a boat, sounds like a boat on the waves. This also, but yes, I did read that he wrote it for his now ex-wife as well, with her in mind.
Yeah, we need to find different channels of research, because that's my only thing I could say about the song was, interesting enough, the mixer Tim Palmer in Dorking, Surrey, which is where you're from. Sorry.
Epsom. Sorry.
Dorking's close. Sorry, so no, we've got a link there.
Sorry, yeah. True.
I live by the English Channel.
Yeah. So
not a lot of surfing vibes. I thought this was quite forgettable, and
what is happening? What is happening to us today?
Quite forgettable, unfortunately for me. And the only thing I could say, Babs has stolen it. But luckily, as I edit the podcast, I will now make sure that that's my interesting fact.
All right.
But did you also not think, like it just sounded different? Like I didn't go on the Wikipedia page of every song, but with this one I was like, oh, I actually want to know what instruments it was, and then it's like, yep, the old fire extinguisher and paper shaker, as you do. Why not?
I can't say I noticed it until I read it, to be fair. But I guess, on any album, you got to have a few quiet moments. So, it makes sense if this is on 10 to have some quieter moments. My question quickly, Ryan, is how come you haven't chosen Alive? Are you bored of it, or?
Yeah, that's a great. I am bored of it, and I honestly have never been a big fan of that song. Like it to me, it's like Enter Sandman for Metallica. It's just not. It's just overplayed, and I don't know. Like there are certain songs that a band puts out that get way too popular, and they just don't work. Like they don't have the staying power for me. Like for example, like Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven, I can still listen to and be totally fine hearing that, even though I've heard it a million times. For some reason, Alive just doesn't do much for me. So yeah, I left it off for a reason. There are a couple I left off because they just were overplayed and I didn't really care to hear them again. Black is another one. I mean, it's a song everyone tries to play on guitar, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to play Black on my acoustic guitar, and I'm like, okay, cool. You know, you do that.
Yeah, I think like in the UK, like the only songs you would ever hear would be Even Flow, Alive, Jeremy, Off 10, and then maybe is it Better Days and Black?
Oh, Better Man.
Better Man and Black, and that's a lot basically.
I have had someone play this next song for me on acoustic guitar, and I didn't mind it. Usually, when someone's like, "Let me strum my acoustic guitar and show you how cool I am," I want to take that guitar and smash it over their head.
Or throw it in the ocean, perhaps.
Or throw it in the ocean. Like when someone's like, "Let me play a Bob Dylan song for you." I'm like, please don't. Or that Green Day song that everyone wants to always play on acoustic guitar. I'm just like, please don't. Please stop. This one, though, I enjoyed hearing my friend play this on guitar, and he sang it, and it sounded really good. I'm usually not a fan of these songs, but this one, I don't know. I think it was just the story behind it. I just really love Eddie when he narrates something and he tells you something, because you just, I don't know, it feels very personal. And sometimes you can see through the other artists that try to do that, and they're maybe not as genuine. And I find like this song has a genuine quality to it. And I think it's a song that many can relate to as well. I think being stuck in a small town, you know, not really going anywhere, I think that is relatable to a lot of people. So I really love it. I think it's simple, but it's effective, and it's very heartfelt.
Yeah, I mean, the title immediately evokes something, elderly woman behind the counter in a small town. And I thought, well, this is going to be one of those Americana type laments, and it was. And I'm afraid that's not really a genre I like. I think it goes back a little bit to what Fran was saying about it being earnest. I was just like, this is going to be about some poor woman stuck in this, and it was. So it didn't surprise me. It's like that was what I expecting. That was what I was expecting. That's what I got, and it's not really something I like. I can appreciate how it builds and it ends, because there's definitely a journey. You know, it starts quiet, it ends quiet, but there's a lot going on in between. But apart from that, I'm afraid it was my joint least favorite song. Ryan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice story, and again, you know, like I said before regarding MTV Unplugged and his quieter vocals, that would suit it. But I've just done a quick old Google for the MTV Unplugged session, and yeah, they do Ocean, State of Love, Alive, Black, Jeremy, Even Flow, and Porch, but they don't play this. And randomly, they didn't release the MTV Unplugged set until October last year, even though they recorded it in 1992. So I don't know what that's about.
The Benjamins.
Yeah, well, maybe. Yeah. Anything else you got? Yeah, but yeah, it wasn't my favorite of their tracks, unfortunately, guys.
Yeah, sorry, Ryan.
Hey, that's okay. It's not everyone's cup of tea. I get that, but I'm not a big fan of those kinds of songs either. But for some reason, this one stuck with me. Like, I really don't like those. Let me strum to my acoustic guitar, tell you a story about America. I'm not really into those either. But I don't know, for some reason, this one did it for me.
Sometimes, I mean, going back to the Vines, perhaps. Sometimes you do appreciate songs in the wider context of a band's outputs. So maybe because this is Pearl Jam, and because they do other things, you would come to this differently. Whereas I'm not a huge fan of Pearl Jam, and I'm not a huge fan of this genre of music. I think, yeah, if something like this came from a band that I liked, I don't know, like if Radiohead did something like this, yeah, probably I'd listen up a little bit more. But yeah, I think I preferred your final pick.
Yeah, Jeremy, which is the first song I heard and the one that really really got me into Pearl Jam. And I don't know, there's something unique about Jeremy. It starts off very differently. I've never heard a song really begin that way before. And I really like Eddie's vocals here. And I love, I don't love the story because it's a very depressing story, but I think it's a good story to tell. And I think it's made me think and I don't know. It's just, it's a song that I can get lost in, and it's a nostalgic song for me too, because it reminds me of high school, and I know the song is about high school and about a kid who, tragically shot himself in front of his high school English class. And I guess there's another side to it too. Like there's two influences on the song, but this was the one that I was always aware of. It was about a guy named Jeremy who actually did kill himself in front of his classmates. And I don't know, it's telling a story that I think is relevant, especially in America, where gun violence and violence in general has been a problem for many, many years. So it's just, to me, it's a unique song. And even though it's one of their biggest hits, I'm sort of, maybe not surprised that it was this big of a hit, but definitely after people found out about the subject matter, I'm surprised that it was still a big hit. So, and I'm surprised the radio and the record companies were like, yeah, let's put this out as a single. So it's Pearl Jam doing whatever the hell they want to do on a song that just went massive. So.
Yeah, I'm going to let you talk about the video in that, Fran, because I'm sure you did the research on that and MTV, because I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I think so. This song was definitely one that I'd sought out to listen to before, and I didn't like it at the time, and I'm afraid I still don't like it. But with this one, I don't know why I don't like it. I think more than any other song on this album, I think I can only attribute it once again to the whole component parts bit, because I like the ending, and it's a long song. I just don't like the journey on the way to the ending. And I do wonder, Ryan, you mentioned that you got into Pearl Jam when you were in high school, whether, the age that you are when you first listen to these things has an influence, because I guess despite not being that age, I first heard Nirvana at secondary school, and you get into it, and it just feels much more meaningful, especially when it's about a young outcast. You can really identify with it as well. It was heartbreaking to read the full story of that kid. You're so used to reading about mass shootings in American high schools. Actually, the fact that he only killed himself is, I don't know, it's a different kind of tragedy. And it is good that someone is singing about these things, but musically, apart from the ending, it didn't really do it for me, I'm afraid.
Did I enjoy the parts? That's the best part of the song, isn't it?
It's pretty good.
I love that. My version is better than their version, obviously. So this video is like literally on all the time, and
I've never seen it.
It basically tells you the story. It's got a kid at school, and it's saying bullying and alienation, and it's got kids cut into is it sepia footage of Eddie Vedder singing. It's it's quite striking, and it won lots of awards. This, to me, if I think of Pearl Jam, I think of this song mainly because of the video, and mainly because I think it's a class song. I enjoyed the lyrics. I enjoyed the bits. Also,
what was that?
I need to have some more Pepsi. Not sponsored. Can I ask a question, bass chief Babs? Is the intro a riff on the bass guitar or a guitar?
I honestly cannot remember. Ryan?
I'm trying to work out. It's quite famous.
I think that's a bass.
Is it a bass?
That's a bass. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a bass to me, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just because it's quite nice to hear a song opening with a bass.
It's interesting that you say that, though, because actually for the next band we're discussing, I did make a note when the bass did and didn't open songs, because I think it does make a difference. But with this one, I think I wasn't thinking about it because I was too busy trying to analyze it as a whole, and there's a lot going on.
But yeah, I think it's a cracking song, and I think that Babs should give it another go whilst watching the video, because that's how I first saw it. So maybe if you had the whole shebang of the multimedia version of Pearl Jam, you may change your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this before, the whole watching a song with a video and without. Often, actually, I don't like to watch the videos of the songs on this podcast, because I have found in the past that when I've discovered songs with videos, I think I don't like them. And then I listen to them by themselves. I'm like, oh no, I do like it. It's just that the visuals were messing with me somehow, or like, it wasn't matching what my idea was. But I think you're probably right there, given that the subject matter is so at the forefront. And it's funny, I read the description of the video and I was like, oh yeah, okay, sounds interesting, but I haven't seen it yet. And actually, Ryan, like I said, I had no idea that Pearl Jam were still releasing music. And I did notice that, all the songs that you picked are from the 90s. So you would say, I'm guessing that's your favorite era of Pearl Jam.
Yeah. I like some of their stuff in the 2000s, but for the most part, it's all that early 90s, the mid 90s stuff that they did. That's my favorite era. It's pretty much from 10 on up to Yield is pretty classic Pearl Jam. And then after Yield, I think they have a weird period where they're kind of like, I don't know, they're not as relevant at that point, and they start to, I think, electronic music and new metal and all these other things, pop punk, emo stuff, they really start to creep in and replace them on the charts and everything. But then they sort of make a comeback in the late 2000s with Backspacer, and I don't know, like they kind of had this weird phase in the 2000s where it was kind of like they tapered off a bit, but then came back. So, but yeah, my favorite's definitely the 90s material. So,
and yeah, I think if you say that their heaviest stuff is their earlier stuff, then I think, yeah, if I do listen outside, it's going to be in the 90s probably.
Babs, do you think Pearl Jam are overrated?
I do. I'm sorry, Ryan. I think especially when I saw their sales figures, and when I saw that they are the 436th most listened to band on Spotify in the world, I didn't change my mind enough on them to not think they were overrated with those facts. Now, definitely I have changed my mind. The good thing is, like, yeah, I've realized that there are Pearl Jam songs that I like. And I think I've realized that despite them being a very popular band, for me at least, I think their songs are not immediately accessible, and I need to give them more of a chance. So maybe even some of the ones on the playlist that you gave me on Future Listen, I would like it. And yeah, who would have thought that it was the quieter songs, the Oceans and the other song that in Garden, Oceans and Garden definitely were some of my highlights. And yeah, there's a different side to Eddie Vedder and the band, and I enjoyed it. So yeah, despite not changing my mind on that, thank you, Ryan, for putting together such a thoughtful playlist, because I have definitely shifted opinion. What about you, Fran? Do you think Pearl Jam are overrated?
Well, I was surprised because I was expecting to hear a Pearl Jam I've not experienced before, like maybe with the other albums, because I knew 10. So apart from the 3 or 4 tracks which aren't on 10, I kind of knew these songs before. So it's harder for me to change my opinion because I knew what I was getting into. Again, I like Alive, I like Jeremy Spoken, I like Even Flow. None of the other tracks you gave me, well, I don't know, maybe Animal was quite good. Yes, maybe 4 out of 10 I enjoyed. So with that in mind, I'm going to have to say overrated. But what we haven't mentioned is that when I watched the documentary, Pearl Jam, the band, don't like 10. They said, yeah, they don't like it. They say it's their least favorite album. And also apparently the critics also think it's one of their worst albums. But it's a band, that are haunted by their early success, and they have to keep playing it. Like, I think Eddie says that, yeah, they would completely re-record it, and it said this.
Oh, that's so interesting. See, that I would listen to, because maybe going back to the production conversation that we were having, it might sound completely different. Yeah, wow, how interesting.
So I wonder if they do perform the 10 tracks slightly different live, do you know, Ryan, or is it as a record?
I've heard them play them differently for sure live, but for the most part, I think they try to keep him as like Jeremy. I've heard them play it pretty much to the T, like it is on the record. I did not know that about 10. That's kind of interesting. I wonder. I don't know. That's weird. Why would they hate their?
Have they ever done
successful
like
album?
a reunion tour of just playing 10, like the whole album or anything at all?
I don't know if they've done a tour, but they've well, this could be the record label, but they have definitely celebrated the anniversary of it. They've released special editions of it on vinyl and everything. So kind of interesting. It's weird. That's sort of weird to hear that they are not as big into that
When is the
album.
documentary from, Fran?
I watched 2. I watched one from 2002.
Holy crap. Two documentaries of a band that you don't like again. Yeah, I'm always surprised.
But I just find it like for some reason, I don't know about you guys, you're music fans, I can watch a documentary about any band or artist because I find the process really interesting. So I've watched documentaries, like the Metallica one. You don't have to like Metallica to enjoy. Is it Make a Monster or some kind of monster?
Some kind of monster.
Because it's just an interesting journey, and to hear people discuss music and talk about it passionately, I just find interesting. So that's why I like to search out when we do this podcast for a documentary, because it's also nice to hear other people's opinions. So in this documentary, you hear about critics. They talk to Sub Pop. They talk to other bands of the same scene. So it's nice to hear different voices, I think, rather than just me looking at Wikipedia and hoping that's true.
Yeah, I do agree with you broadly on music documentaries, but I'm just an impatient person. So as in, if I'm like, oh, what am I going to watch this evening? Like a music documentary, even if it's about a band that I don't like, would be something. Like, I watched the Nina Simone documentary that's on Netflix, and I thought it was fascinating. And I'm reading at the moment Art, Sex, Music by Kosi Fanny Tusi from Throbbing Gristle. I do not know one Throbbing Gristle song, but it's obviously an interesting read. But I think, doing the prep for this podcast obviously takes time. Just listening to the songs and taking notes take time. The thought of adding like a 1 hour or another 1.5 hours to it, like, I'm dedicated, but sorry guys, I'm not that dedicated. So yeah, no, I would maybe watch like a short video on YouTube, but I don't think I would watch a Pearl Jam documentary. What about you, Ryan?
I've never seen any Pearl Jam documentaries. I've only really watched live performances and music videos, but I've heard of that documentary that you were mentioning earlier, Fran, the first one you mentioned. I forget what it was called, but
Story or something.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
But there was actually a film. They made a film called 20, like a documentary movie.
That's what I've heard.
But
That's what I've heard.
Not available for free on YouTube, guys. So I wasn't going to pay money.
So welcome to the end of part 1. So what do you think? Has your mind been changed on Pearl Jam? Did you like them in the first place? I don't know. I still think there are some better bands out there for sure. Although I did find myself listening to Garden the other day. So there we go. As mentioned up the top, this is part 1 of 2 parts. We will be talking about L7 as our underrated grunge band. That's a situation where Ryan and Babs really like them and Fran doesn't. How is that one going to turn out? Again, you'll have to tune in and see. If you want to talk to us, you can follow us on Instagram. We're over Underrated Music Pod. We're on Twitter at OU Music Pod. Or if you'd like to write a missive via email, you can email us over underratedmusicpod@gmail.com. I've had a lovely time up the top of the Space Needle, had a drink, walked around, and now I am going back down to try and see if I can find Eddie Vedder driving around in a car. Wish me luck.